All right, my name is JJ Pinter, and like Nick said, I'm the Executive Director of Team Red, White, and Blue. Quick show of hands, how many people know Team Red, White, and Blue? Know of Team Red, White, and Blue? Good. So today, I'm going to be speaking not so much as the Executive Director of Team Red, White, and Blue, but as JJ Pinter, the person who's been doing this veteran stuff for about 8 or 9 years now. And we're going to talk about transition. And I just want to kind of preemptively say that I've been accused of being a contrarian my entire life, and I'm going to probably express some contrarian views today. And some of you are probably not going to like what I have to say. Some of you might, but I just ask that you listen through the end of it because I think it's an important message. We're in an interesting spot, I think, in our country right now as it relates to the military. So if you think about it, we're fighting the longest wars that our country has ever fought. I think this is I could be wrong in this. I think this is the first multi-generational war where we have parents and kids that have fought in the same place in the same war, right? But on the veteran community, we're in this weird spot where we've found ourselves in a place where we've got this kind of mixed message going on. On one hand, we talk about how veterans are great leaders and veterans are great employees and veterans are assets. And on the other side, we talk about how veterans are victims and veterans are broken. And we've got certainly entitlement is an issue in the veteran community. So it's this really weird narrative. And some of it is from the outside kind of coming in. And then some of it is from us, like the veteran community, in the way that we talk about this, if we're just being really honest. So we're going to dig into some of that today. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to address it head on. And then we're going to talk about action, because I think ultimately that's what we can control is action. So we're going to unpack this. I think I might have drawn some different conclusions than other people have. That might be the case. And I'm going to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end, because I would love to get a little bit of feedback on this. I don't know if everyone can see this okay, but when we think about veterans, there's a lot of things that when we think about in the veteran community that don't make sense to me. And I'm going to highlight some of these. And so the first is this perception. There's the public perception of veterans, especially the 9/11 veteran, has been pretty well studied. And what we find is that the public really thinks that veterans are one of two things, that they're either victims, and in my mind, a victim is someone who you should feel sorry for, right? Or you think that veterans are heroes, someone that you should worship. And then this is a Venn diagram for those of you who like math. And in the middle, you have the broken hero, right? So you're a little bit of both. And this is what the public, I think, research tells us, thinks about the post-9/11 veteran. And some of this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I wanted to highlight some of the things. You know, victims are people who were forced to join the military. Everything was perfect in their life before they joined the military. They're damaged by service. And everything that goes wrong with them for the rest of their life is because of those 4 years that they spent in service. Heroes, they spent their entire military time kicking in doors all day, every day. They saved kids and puppies. There's no way that they joined the military for educational benefits. There's absolutely no way. Completely altruistic. They should be worshipped and they can't do anything wrong for the rest of their life. Sound about right? Yes. So here's what I think the reality is. This is a bell curve, normal distribution. I'm an engineer. We're going to get into that a little bit. Here's what I think this looks like. Nobody really knows for sure because we don't have a central database. I think there are some victims, small amount. There are some true heroes, small amount. But when I think about the people that I served with over the decade that I was in the Army, most of them are in the middle somewhere, right? They're good people. They served honorably. They did the best they could. Got in a little trouble, everybody does, but they try to do the right thing. They had a decent experience. It wasn't great. Decent experience. The longer they've been out of the military, the better they think it was, right? But I always say if it was so great, you'd still be in, right? They transitioned out. It was bumpy. It wasn't perfect, but it was sufficient. And they're living a fairly normal, whatever that is, post-military life. And they have the same problems as everybody else. This is what I think reality more closely looks like. Here's the challenge is we don't really know about this. The DOD, who is the only person who has their arms around every veteran, if we're being honest, they don't really care what happens to vets. They kind of care, but they're much more focused about bringing new people into DOD every year than keeping track of the 200,000 that leaves DOD every year, if we're being really honest. And so there's no central database where we can go find out what's going on with veterans. Even less than 40% interact with the VA, so you're still missing a huge percentage. So when we talk about disconnects, I started to first see this public perception of veterans, and then I started to see what I thought the reality of was based off what I saw around me with veterans. And I saw, whoa, these things are pretty far off, right? The people I know aren't victims or heroes. They're good, red-blooded Americans that try to do their best. This is more closely what it looks like. Like, okay, well, so this is just perception, right? We're talking about public perception, or we're talking about my perception. Is there a place that we can go and see if we can find out a little bit more about what this looks like? Yeah, so I'm an engineer by kind of training, and so I like to look at math, and I like to look at numbers. So let's see if we can find out a little bit more about the veteran. So here is what we know, and I promise this is going to be a little different. I'm probably the only person today who's going to have pie charts up here, I promise. But billions of dollars every year are dumped into the veteran community to try to help veterans. But nobody really knows what is working kind of universally. And in 2015, the Jackson Foundation embarked on a huge project to try to understand this. They worked with Penn State and the VA and a couple other universities. It was the first ever known kind of longitudinal study. And they followed over 10,000 veterans. They sampled them when they got out of the military, and they followed them for 3 years. And they looked at everything that they did, and they tried to track them over 3 years to see how were they really doing once they got out of the military. And they used this measure of well-being to track that. And so it was really 4 categories. It was their health, their mental and physical health, their vocation or their job, did they have a job, their financial situation, and their relationships. And so they developed a score to see how veterans were doing as they transitioned to the military for 3 years. And here's what we found. About almost 50% are doing good. Right? That's what you would think, right? Veterans have training in the military that civilian counterparts don't have. You would expect that they would take that, they would take the experiences they would have, they take the leadership they learned in the military, and they would do well once they get out. Like, yeah, that seems like it makes sense to me. 39%, or about 40%, are doing well on the jobs, finances, and relationships aspect, but their health is not well. Okay, I want you to remember that because we're going to come back to this. And then about 15% are not doing well. Their well-being is not good. They have real challenges, and they need more intense care. They have needs coming out of the military. That, to me, I'm like, okay, this sounds about right, because I absolutely know some people who need care. They need mental health care. They need whatever it is, but it's not everybody, right? I have a lot of people that I know that are high performing. Well, this doesn't fit that broken veteran narrative very well, right? About half of the veterans are doing well by an objective measure. Another 40% are doing mostly well, like they're successful, but their health is not is good. And about 15% are not. Like, okay, that seems like it's about right to me. But this is a study. This was a well-recognized study, but I wasn't involved in this study, but this was the first one of its kind. Is there anywhere else that we can look? So does anyone else know a national veteran-serving nonprofit that has chapters in 200 locations and 200,000 members and also looks at this kind of stuff in research efforts? Team Red, White, and Blue. Very good. So it turns out we care about this stuff too. And we use something called it's called the Enriched Life Scale. This is I don't want to get too nerdy, it's a validated survey instrument. We worked with Syracuse University to develop it, and we look at the enrichment of our members. And we test, it's 5 categories. We look at their physical health, their mental health, their sense of purpose, their relationships, and engaged citizenship. And it comes into 5 buckets it's in 20% intervals. And if you look down at the bottom, if someone wants to do the math really quickly, 96 are not as all enriched. That's the lowest score that you can have. 281 in this is veterans only, are the second lowest category. That adds up to about 16% of our total veteran population. Whoa, sorry about that. Okay, we have something going on here. About 16%, these are Team RWB veteran members, another sample. They're not biased at all. These are people who took the survey this year, good slice of veterans. About 16% are telling us that their enrichment or their well-being is not very good. The rest of them are doing pretty well. Like, yeah, again, this could be a little biased, absolutely, but we have two kind of independent, and these are both well-done surveys that line up pretty well. Anyone want to guess? Because there's 5 different domains, does anyone want to guess what the lowest category was for our members? Physical health. 100%. You see where this is going? All right. So we spent a little bit of time talking about public perception of veterans, and we spent a little bit of time talking about like what my perception was. We tried to dig into some real numbers and say, okay, how are veterans really doing? The post 9/11 veteran, how are they really doing? Most of them are doing pretty well. There's a percentage at the bottom that have real life needs. But most of them are doing pretty well. It's like, okay, that seems well. Because I've always subscribed to this mindset that veterans are not victims, veterans are assets. And that there's, if you think about the greatest generation, what? They went and fought and won World War II. They came back and not only served in our country, but had this tremendous economic impact, right? I've always said, like, why can't the post 9/11 veteran generation do the same thing? We absolutely can. So veterans seem to be doing pretty well. But there's something we haven't talked about yet. We haven't talked about disability. Now, this is not going to be a speech about VA disability, but we can't talk about how well veterans are doing and not talking about this. And this is the most recent numbers from the VA. And what we see is that overall, the blue line, the veteran population of the last 20 plus years is dramatically declining, and rates of VA disability are dramatically increasing. 41% of every veteran, I want you to think about this, 41% of every veteran that has served since post 9/11 is disabled, and of that 41%, almost half are more than 60% disabled. Well, that doesn't line up to me. We just got done looking at well-being measures, and veterans they're telling us that they're doing pretty well. But 41% of every veteran, I want you to get your head around that number, is disabled, and half of them are 60% disabled. Now, there's probably some real reasons for this, right? There's been advances in battlefield medicine, so now we have people who are living and coming back who previously wouldn't have. There's advances in how we look at traumatic brain injury. There's different screenings. I'm not an expert on this. I think it's something important that we should look at. And something that a lot of people don't want to talk about is the fact that the disability system has been monetized. And there are businesses that exist just to help, businesses that make a lot of money just to get people VA disability. The other thing is, that no one wants to talk about, is that some veterans will maybe exaggerate things so that they can get a paycheck for the rest of their life, right? I don't know. Is nearly half of every veteran that has served in the last 20 years disabled? I don't know. I'm just saying that this paints a very different picture. I don't know what the answer is. So we spent some time talking about the situation. What I thought was really powerful when Carl kicked off this morning is he spent some time talking about action. I've gotten really into reading Stoic philosophy in the last couple of years, and one of the tenets of Stoic philosophy is that we can't control what happens to us, we can only control how we react to it. And I think very much in the same way. So this is the situation, if we use military terms, this is the operating environment. So let's talk about what we can and can't do, because I think ultimately that's the most important thing here. Transition. So I want to dive in and talk about military transition. This has changed a lot in the last 20 years. When I got out of the military in the mid-2000s, the Army had something called the ACAP process. Does anyone else go through ACAP? Okay, do something called the ACAP process. My buddy's wife worked in the ACAP office. I think it was 2 days at the time, and I didn't even go. She signed off on my papers at lunch, and I didn't even have to go because I was just trying to get out of the Army as quickly as possible. It's now been updated to TAP, the TAP process. There's been a lot of time studying. I mean, in the veteran space, we argue about what transition is, how long transition is. Is transition 6 months or a year or 3 years or 20 years or a lifetime? I mean, we can't even agree on that. but we know that transition, it takes time, and it's probably different for different people. There's been a lot of time studying transition and what goes wrong on transition, and there's been a lot of good work on this. But currently, the transition process, the TAP process, is very benefits-centric. If you've been through it, you know. The positioning is, there's all these great benefits for veterans out there. Your success is proportional to the amount of benefits that you can consume. And as I was going through that process, I always said, well, that doesn't make sense to me, because that's extrinsic. Right? The veteran can say, my transition success is responsible for somebody or some other entity. Well, that doesn't seem right to me. Like, someone else is not responsible for your transition. You're responsible for your transition. Like, certainly people need help, and certainly there are places where we need benefits, but that doesn't seem right, that transition should be focused on somebody else. So there's a lot of, we've studied this a lot, and there's been a lot of research, and I've really been in the research to look at transition and to say, okay, clearly people have difficulty transitioning out of the military. I don't want to say that's the case. What really goes wrong? So there's 3 basic things that we found pretty much universally go wrong in a transition for a veteran. So I want to go from the crowd here. What do you think these things are, if you had to guess? Yes. Entitlement, okay. We're gonna get to that.
Financial decisions.
Finances, okay. What?
Poor expectations.
Poor expectations, okay.
PTSD phobia of the populace.
Okay, that's absolutely another one as well.
Unwillingness to adapt.
Okay. Isolation, very good. Let me jump into this. So there's 3 things that there's lots of different research that pretty much stand out. First thing is health. Veterans' health goes downhill dramatically, and we're going to talk about some details post-military service and why that's important. Physical and mental. The second one is loneliness and social isolation. You're in the military, by definition, you're part of a team, right? Even if you don't want to be, you're forced to be part of a team. You do everything together from the moment you enter the military to the moment you leave. You get out, you go wherever you're going to go. You get a job working wherever you're going to get. It's hard to make friends as an adult, and people get lonely and socially isolated. And this isn't just a veteran problem. This is in America. This is a society problem, but it's also a veteran problem. It's perpetuated in the veteran community. And there's a lack of purpose. You're in the military. You know, you have a mission always. You're part of something bigger than yourself. You get out of the military. You go. You're working a job somewhere. You don't have that sense of purpose anymore. So we look at these and we say, okay, well, that doesn't really square because those are all intrinsic things, right? So when I look at those, I say, okay, what is the thing about those things that stand out? And what is the unifying theme? When you think about those and you think about transition. That's what it is. Nobody is going to do those things for you. So if we look at the things that most commonly go wrong in military transition, here's the thing. Nobody is going to do those things for you. Your health isn't good? Exercise. No one is going to exercise for you. Don't eat crap food and exercise. Period. No one's going to do that for you. If you're lonely, make friends. And I know some people in here are going to say, oh, it's hard to make friends. I can't make friends. Bullshit. Go put yourself in a position to make friends. Go join a CrossFit gym. Go join a youth group. Volunteer. You go to church. Go to Bible study. Force yourself to make friends. Find a group of people that seems like they have shared interests to you, and go meet someone. Go ask someone to have coffee with you. It takes work. I'm not saying it doesn't take work. It 100% takes work. No one's going to do it for you. The very definition of being lonely is not having friends and not having people you can talk to. And the last one, lack of sense of purpose. Volunteer. Start volunteering. There's lots of other ways you can do it. Some people are lucky enough to get purpose in their job. Some people get purpose in other places. Be a big brother coach youth sports, be a deacon at your church, go read to kids. I don't care what you do, but start doing it. Because if you wait until you're starting to have a void in these things, that's when you get into a problem. I told someone the other day, if I could redesign the Army TAPS program, or the Army's TAP program, I would say to people these three things. I would say, listen, you're getting out of the military right now. I know you're excited to leave, and you're probably thinking about the future. It's not going to turn out the way you think it's going to. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you start doing three things right now, I promise you your success. I can't promise you a completely successful transition, but what I can promise you is that you're going to optimize your transition. It's going to be better than it would have. Start exercising every day. You're probably going to be more, if you don't, you're probably going to, I know you're sick of doing PT and rolling in the wet grass and all those things. Keep exercising, because it's going to be bad if you don't. Second, you're going to be lonely, period. So start making friends right now, and don't allow yourself to do that. Just pencil some time into your life to be social with people outside of your family. A lot of veterans specifically have families. They want to do everything with their family, and that's incredibly important. It's important to have relationships outside of the family, and start volunteering immediately. You're not going to realize the sense of purpose that you're lacking until later. So don't let it get to that. Start volunteering right now. And oh, by the way, you might actually even do a little good in your community at the same time. We could spend a lot of time diving into all of those. I want to deep dive on one of them. Can you guess which one I want to get into? Health. I want to get into health. This number, 75 to 84% of veterans, what does that represent? Someone want to guess? Bryce hit it. He cheated. I want you to look at this number. 75 to 84% of veterans are classified medically as overweight or obese within 4 years of getting out of the military. Now, again, I'm not fat shaming. That is not my intent, right? This is a striking statistic. This is a striking statistic, and BMI is not a perfect proxy for health, but it's a decent one, and that's what we have to use. That is crazy to me. Now, here's what's crazy about this. There used to be, historically, something researchers called, I spent a lot of time reading veterans research, there used to be something called the healthy soldier effect. And what that meant was that, and this is previous to 9/11, that if you were in the military, you were healthier than your civilian counterparts. You were more resilient, and you were healthier than your civilian counterparts because of your military experiences. This is as far back as they've been doing research on this. So because of the training that you had, because of all of those things that made you more healthy. We now have transitioned to this place. We've now transitioned to this place where military veterans are less healthy than their civilian counterparts. In the last 20 years, this has happened. We've done a lot of research at Team RWB. I've written on this topic a lot, and so my intent is not to plug my own stuff, but I've grabbed some pieces from some academic articles that we've written to put in here. But yeah, so I'm going to read this. Weight gain is bad for your physical health, no doubt. As such, veterans are significantly affected by obesity and related cardiovascular conditions, like coronary artery disease and strokes, more so than their civilian counterparts. Think about that for a second. Veterans are more unhealthy, on average, than civilians after they get out of the military. And we're just talking about physical health right here. How does that happen? Yeah, maybe stress is part of it. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I have some reasons that I think that we'll talk about in a second, but I don't know what the answer is. It's not good, I can tell you that. And here's another part about it. We're now starting to understand the link between physical health and mental health, and it's striking. So that's not the only problem. Physical, mental, and emotional health issues often occur together. This is called comorbidity for those of you who are in this space. So as your physical health gets worse, it's likely that these other forms of your health will get worse as well. So it's not just that your physical health is bad, your mental health and your emotional health get bad. That's what's so scary to me about this. Do you remember when I showed you the pie chart at the beginning where I said 50% of veterans are doing pretty well, 40% are doing pretty well other than their health? That's the 40% I'm talking about here. Like, they could go either way. And that's a place that we can have some effect. And that's the message that I want to get here is it's this idea of physical health, because it's not just your physical health, and it's not just your BMI or everything else. You can control your physical health, and it's related to so many other things. There's this very direct connection between your physical health and your mental health now. I mean, if you read any of the research about mental health, like one of the first things at the top of all of them is exercise, being outside and getting exercise. Right? But what is it about exercise again? It takes work. It does. It's not fun sometimes. 100% it's not fun sometimes. I mean, but are we happy with veterans being more unhealthy than everybody else? Yeah. Does anyone here know have heard the phrase Occam's razor? Does anyone know what that is?
Simplest explanation.
Yes, absolutely. Occam is a old French philosopher, and it basically is the simplest solution is the most correct solution when you're looking at things that happen, right? And so I think the example people always use is to highlight this is if you're in the woods and there's two trees that are knocked down and you're trying to figure out why they fell down. Did they get knocked over by the wind in a windstorm? Possible. Or did they get hit independently by two comets and knocked over? Again, plausible. Not very likely, right? So according to Occam's razor, the simplest solution is the most right solution. So when we think about this, physical health, mental health, emotional health, like what's the simplest solution? Exercise. Here's the thing, according to the Mayo Clinic, 75 minutes a week of vigorous activity, 2 strength training sessions. Helps with weight control, right? Important. Combats health condition and diseases. And we're talking about, the Mayo Clinic says stroke, metabolic disease, blood pressure, diabetes, anxiety, arthritis. They even say some forms of cancer can be controlled with consistent exercise. And I'm not even talking about eating. I'm just talking about exercise. Improves your mood. When I talk about mental health, consistent good mood is a pretty important part of that, right? Energy boost. One of the classic symptoms of depression is low energy levels. Better sleep, very common thing in the veteran community, poor sleep. You sleep a whole lot better when you're dead tired and you hit your head on the pillow at the end of the night. I'll skip that one. The Mayo Clinic said it's got to be true. And it can be social, which is a really important part of this. And there's even been some really good research done. I'm talking like really good double-blind random control research where they've had as much or more efficacy in treating some mental health conditions, including depression, with consistent exercise as they have with antidepressant drugs. So this is something that we talk about at Team RWB. We have what we call, I'm going to pull in a little bit of Team RWB here, we have what we call the daily checklist. And what we say to our members is, if you do these 3 things every day, I mean, according to this, it's science, it's got to be true. According to science, you're going to probably be doing okay. 1 is do something physical every day. Try to get your heart rate up every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. And if you can, try to do more than you did the day before. The second thing is talk to a friend every day. Make it a point. And the third thing is have a goal and try to do something to work towards a goal every single day. Now I'm going to keep harping on this. What's the beautiful thing about exercise? It's multiplicative in nature. You can do all 3 of these things. You can exercise. You can do it in a social setting. Why do you think CrossFit is so popular? My high school football coach had us doing those same exercises when I was in the 80s, or I guess not in the 80s, in the 90s. CrossFit came in and put community around it in a way that people really like. So you can do this and you can have community and then work towards a fitness goal. You can bang out 3 things at one time with exercise. And you're going to have oversized efforts. oversized effects. Now, what I'm going to get back to, though, whose responsibility is this? It's ours. No one is going to do this for you. And I think this is the disconnect in the veteran community right now, is that in some places we've been told and we've been telling ourselves that it's everyone else's fault, right? Someone else is going to do all of this stuff for you. If your transition is not going well, it's not your fault, it's somebody else's. I would suggest the exact opposite. There are certainly, again, I want to make sure I'm not glossing over, there are people who have real issues and real needs coming out of the military, and we need to get them intense care, 100%, but it's not everybody. These are things, I think we have just a perpetual problem with ownership, and veterans need to take ownership of their transition, and there are things that they can do, things that we can do to make their transition more successful. And when I say transition, this could be 10 years. I mean, this stuff lasts, it goes over time. So I would offer that the next time that you hear a veteran talking about things not going well, you could offer some of this stuff up to them. And let's think about options racer. The simplest solution is the most correct solution. Everyone can do something to exercise every day. And I think when you think about where you can spend your time that will have outsized benefits, doing a little bit of exercise is going to be really important. And I have people say to me, I don't have time. And again, I say, bullshit. You have time. Now, the proper way you could say is I choose not to make it a priority, but you have time. You could not sleep. You know, there are other things that you could do. You absolutely could make time to do it. You just have to choose to make it a priority. I can't think of anything more important than your health. So, before I take some questions, here's my message. No matter what happens during transition, it's your fault, good or bad. So, thank you very much. And I would love to get some questions and love to get a little bit of feedback, because I fully admit that I could say this thing in some rooms and people would throw stuff at me. So.
Something I wanted to point out. So when you were comparing your results on the survey versus how many are actually utilizing benefits, definitely I do feel like there's an overutilization of those benefits, but do you also think that maybe people are less likely to report on your survey that they don't feel fine, yet the benefits are actually showing what they actually receive?
Yeah, so if I might have hit that our survey at Team RWB is inherently biased because it's just Team RWB members, right? So they have taken some step to be a member of Team RWB. But the first survey I showed you, the pie chart, that's randomized. And so that is veterans leaving the military. I'm not an expert in VA benefits, and I have a tough time believing that half of the veterans who have served over the last 20 years are disabled. And I think that it's something we should look into, and I offer it up as a data point, I guess is what I say. So, yeah, again, like I'm not an expert on this, and government policy is not my forte, but I think it's something we should at least talk about, because it doesn't square with what we're being told on some of these studies. So, yes, sir.
To follow up to that, I actually have I guess two questions. I guess.
Hit me.
Just to follow up to that one, I do believe that there are some veterans out there who take advantage of the system. I know for a fact that there are some out there. But do you think that is due to the fact that society has created that issue because there's so many veterans that are out there who didn't receive help in the past, and that is the reason why the system is broken the way that it is now?
Maybe, but I would go back to what Carl said earlier. Maybe it is a problem that's created by society, but that has happened in the past, and we can control what we can control right now. And my message would be, yeah, maybe, but the only way we're going to fix that is by doing something different. And the thing that we can all do right now, everyone, is to try to take ownership of our transition and to try to be more proactive. But yeah, I mean, I think there's...
Because it seems like the VA doesn't want anyone to slip through the system anymore. And it seems like that the way that they do that is just like, hey, let's just get everybody in here. Let's give everybody a rating. Let's get everybody... Yeah, I mean, to wait 2 hours for labs that just happened to me on Wednesday sucks. And I mean, but there's like, how can, like, if society has created that, it's such a, like, anyone in here that goes to the VA, everyone that says like, oh, I have a VA appointment, the reaction that the person that they're telling that to is just like, ew. You know, like, everyone knows that the VA is just it's the worst place on earth to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would go back to just what I said earlier. Like, we can't control what the world does to us. We can only control how do we react to it. So the VA is not perfect. Like, I get my health care at the VA 100%. It's not perfect. They treat me pretty well. But I just think that I'm talking big, huge generalizations here. Like, we as a group of veterans have gotten to this place where we have given control of our transition to other people, and it's ours. And I didn't answer your question very well, but yeah. I hope I did.
And the second part or second question is with the TAP classes that so coming out of the Marine Corps, we're in the Army. I think everybody can attest to this. Is like, we're all like these badass dudes that come out, we're in shape or whatever, and we work out all the time. But I don't think no one in TAP class, no one ever had a nutrition class or anything that tells. I was eating 5,000 calories a day when I was in the Marine Corps, working out every day, 3 times a day actually. Get out the Marine Corps and I'm still eating 5,000 calories and not working out once.
Yeah, I will 100% say I think the TAP agenda, if I was writing the TAP agenda, I would completely change it to the things that I talked about before, right? I'm not, and it is what it is, and until Congress changes, Congress dictates what is in the TAP agenda, so I don't want to get into a TAP class. It's actually a joint thing between the VA and the Department of Labor and the Department of Defense. But that's why organizations like ours exist, why Gallant Few exist, because we're trying to send that message to veterans that, hey, like staying healthy. That's why one of the 5 points on the Gallant Few star is physical, right? I mean, we're trying to send the message that this is really important.
Okay, I got 3 if I can remember all 3.
Hit me.
First one is Milan, Georgia, who's a Vietnam veteran. He had to leave here earlier because he's got a little health thing going on. But he never applied for VA disability. Never felt like he deserved it because he knew other men that he served with in Vietnam that were tore up. And he went through multiple bouts of cancer and some other things. And finally, at the urging of myself and some others, a year ago, he goes to the VA, and the VA's like, oh, where you been all our lives? You're 100% disabled.
Yeah.
So I think there's an attitude of the older generation. They didn't deserve it or earn it. My stepfather served in World War II, never went and applied for VA benefits.
Yep.
So I think now there's more of an attitude that you must go. So the more veterans that do enroll in the system, the more disabilities you're going to get. One of the ratings that I have is a 0% for an ankle fracture on a jump. No compensation for it, but that's a disability rating from the VA. I also think there's an onus that every veteran needs to go get health care at the VA so that you see what's going on. If you have a great job and you have private health insurance and you don't use the VA, then you're ceding the care of the VA to whatever it is, right? You're taking advantage of your great health insurance. You got to go use the VA, and if it's bad, then raise a stink about it. Use your leadership skills and get that changed. So I think that's important. The second one that I was going to say is when I moved here 6 years ago, my wife took a job that transferred us from Wichita, Kansas down here. So it's like she gets deployed, and I'm the military spouse, right? Not military, but when we come here, I don't know anybody. Yeah. I know absolutely 0 people in a metroplex of over 10 million people. And if I don't, because I home office with what I do with Gallant Few, if I don't get out and meet somebody, then it's me and my dogs. And my wife is overseas doing her job, and I have no reason to leave my 4 walls of my house.
Yeah.
But one of the first things that I did was I looked for and joined a Rotary Club. So you talked earlier about some of the other groups that are out there. Rotary International, Dallas has got over 120 different clubs. They're all small, they're cheap to join, and a good percentage of them are veterans. If you want to instantly meet some people that believe in service above self, look for a Rotary Club.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
I forgot what the third one was.
Yeah, and so I want to really hit two things really quickly. One, I also work from home, and if you don't force some social interaction in your life, that is like the most lonely, isolating thing that you'll ever do. So yeah, I mean, it is. You know, I thought long and hard about whether or not to include the VA slide on this because I'm a supporter of the VA. I get my health care at the VA. I think it's useful context. But yeah, anyways, wherever Nick goes, that's where I'm going to answer.
Hey, Mike Harvey here.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing? We talked last night for a little bit. I just retired right at a year ago, September 1st last year. And a couple of things to follow up with is being a senior leader, almost 30 plus years, including went to college and everything, part of the military. I remember telling guys we'd come back from a combat deployment, and within, they had 180 days left till they got out of the service. They got extended anywhere from 120 to 180 days, whatever. But, here's your checklist. You have to go to the VA. And so that was one of those things. And that's just a follow on to the increasing amount of VA disability, VA claims and that are out there. And I'm one of them. I mean, I transitioned out of a crappy little place in South Carolina, but I still had to go to the VA because I remember preaching to my subordinates, hey, you have to go. So it's a requirement. So I think that's part of the reason right there. To follow up with, it's your fault. My only response to that is you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I've been solving problems my whole life. I've been leading men and women, great people. I know I wanted to get a job. I know I wanted to make a little money. I wanted I wanted my first house after 15 moves. So I mean, those are my personal goals. But you don't know what you don't know about how to write that resume or how to interview for that job. And there's some great resources, and I try to exhaust every one of them. But my only response, once again, is I just think to some extent, a lot of us, as you transition, whether what level, enlisted or officer, you always don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And I will admit that my headline choice was a little tongue-in-cheek because I wanted to elicit the response that I am getting. So 100%.
It hits the mark, though.
Yeah.
Because you own yourself. You own your decisions.
Yeah. I love your vest also, by the way.
Ring knockers.
We just lost.
Yeah.
And, here's the thing. I honestly, this is a little bit counterintuitive, but this is anecdotal, but just, from 8 years at Team RWB, senior leaders in the military, you would think they come out and they have more resources. I see senior leaders struggle in the transition more, colonels and sergeant majors and first sergeants. I see, again, anecdotal, I see struggling there in places that you wouldn't think you would have.
They're more institutionalized.
Yeah.
I'll just make it quick. I have one opinion on it. I feel like there's a rhetoric when you're in the military,
Yeah.
about to get out, or you just got out, you're getting told, hey, go to the VA, go get disability, you deserve it. For me, when I got out, I was young, and now I know for a fact if I get 100% in Texas, I can get 0 property taxes on my home, 0 down payment. For me, in my stages in life right now, I'm thinking, hell yeah. But, 24, I'm like, I got an apartment, I'm good. The same rhetoric, though, goes with, hey, we're going to give you 100%, but you can't work. So you get this guy who's probably okay, has a good job, but now he's like, well, I'm going to stay at home and collect $4,000 a month, and there goes his health. At the same time, he's also trying to deal with adjusting to the civilian life, but he's not working anymore. So there goes his friends, right? Maybe he's not home. Maybe he's in South Texas, So now he's alone, told he's not allowed to work, but he's getting financial support from an institution that has been berated on because it's not perfect. At the same time, how do you filter or how do you screen something that you can't see? At the same time, how do you tell someone, hey, you're not worth 100%, right?
Yeah, I don't dispute that this is a convoluted issue, but I think, what you said, I think is an important, I hear this from veterans all the time. My intent is not to have a disability conversation, so I probably shouldn't put that slide in there. But, I hear people, veterans say this to me all the time, I deserve it, or you deserve it. And I say, no, I disagree. You deserve what's said on your contract. You deserve to get paid. Like, when you sign to join the military, this is where people are going to get mad at me and throw stuff. You don't deserve to be paid for the rest of your life. You deserve to get what you agreed to do, right? That's what you deserve. Now, if something happened, VA disability is something separate, and I'm not attacking that. But the barracks lawyers, I hear this all the time, like, you deserve it. And my answer is, no, we all signed an agreement. There was a lawyer standing in front of every single one of us that explained it to you. Like, you deserve what was promised to you, which is to get paid every month for whatever your contract is. Now, so again, I don't. This is a complex topic that's part of the problem, and so don't say sorry. I don't want to the message of we can control what we can control, and it's clear that veterans have ceded that control over the last 20 years. And my message is we got to pull it back, because I don't want to come off as being negative on veterans. I absolutely think that veterans are critically important to our country. And let me do a quick poll right here. This is apolitical. Think about your community at home. Think about where you live. Think about the town you live in. Think about your state all the way up. Raise your hand if you think we have good, sufficient leadership at all levels around us. Your schools, your churches, your communities. Okay. No one thinks we have enough leadership. What's the solution to that problem? Okay. Who can solve that problem? Yes, we can. That's my message. And we're not going to be able to do that as a veteran community if we don't properly transition. We can't. You got to be able to take care of your. There's a reason that people when you get on an airplane that someone says, if the plane's going down, put your mask on yourself and then help other people. It's the same thing. We've got to get our act together so that we can help other people. I mean, that's the core of my message. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, JJ. Just Adam Davies with Bunker Labs. I want to
Hey, Adam.
thank you and Carl for kind of pounding this personal accountability drum. There's plenty of challenges, right? I know that you are personally not into a lot of policy advocacy.
Yes.
And into exercise, and I think that's great. But if you were, outside of your platform that you now have as the head of Team Red, White, and Blue, where do you think you would focus your efforts? Policy, incentives, organizations that are not in exercise that you think are doing great work? Could you talk more about that?
Yes. Good question. Way to put me on the spot, and I will answer it in full. Okay. Disclosure. I am speaking as JJ Pinter, the person, and I want to be very clear about this. This is not Team RWB's position, okay? So a couple things that I would do. First off, I would change the TAP process, exactly what I talked about, and it would be much more focused. We would move it to a well-being centered approach away from a benefit-centric approach. That would be the first thing that I would do. The second thing is I would dive into the way that VA disability works a little bit. For those of you who don't know, there's three parts of the VA. There's the benefits side that does disability and other stuff. Then there's the healthcare side, and they're not connected. And it's crazy to me that we would be paying people to be sick and not be trying to get them well on the same time. The two are not connected. That is absurd to me. So that would be a place I would start, and I would stop calling everything a disability. Sleep apnea is not a disability. It is a condition, that can be treated. And so I think we do veterans a disservice by calling everything a disability, because then the people who have real disabilities, everything gets watered down. They don't get the level of care that they need. So those are 3 things that I would do that I hope no one was videotaping that. I'll never run for office because I'll get thrown out of the room. But that's what I would do, me personally. Does that answer your question, Travis, wherever you're at? Or Adam, sorry. Yeah. I love Bunker Labs, by the way.
So do I. Thanks, JJ, for talking about this topic. I know this is a very sensitive topic to talk about. And I asked the question again, could we possibly, the veterans, be a part of the process or the reason why the VA system is screwed up? You know, there is the logs in the river jam up sometimes, and we need to look at that as a community. So, you know, thank you for talking about it, because we need to be talking about it as leaders. We need to be looking at the process. We need to be looking how we compensate, looking how the care process works. I mean, as somebody that was thrown clonazepam at the very first instant of touching the VA, like the process is broken, but it's not the worst. And I had a very good level of care for going in for surgery 2 years ago. So I know it's very hit or miss, but I feel like we create more of the problem than is really being talked about. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I thank you for your courage to stand up and talk as a senior leader about your struggles and your objective about transition, because that's where we're at that point. We're at senior leadership having the ability to make permanent cultural change in the military. We have the ability and time to talk to all of our service members about proper expectation management from day one of the military, because they signed a contract. Hey, look, at the end of your 4 years, you can expect this to happen. It's just the way it is. And waiting for this 6 months till we get out kind of thing is crazy to think that we're not talking about health, loneliness, and lack of a purpose on the outside as early as possible. We can be training the team leaders, we can be training the section leaders earlier to objectively talk about it. So I appreciate your desire to talk about it, and I hope more senior leadership stand up to do the same.
Any questions?
Whoops.
Yes, sir.
How do we get involved?
Hey, hold on. Here we go.
What?
That's what I was going to ask.
No, for the RWB, how exactly do we get involved?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to teamrwb.org and join. And if you go to Google Play, or we have an app now, which is the easiest way to get connected. So I think we host probably about 40,000 events a year all around the country. And so they're not, you know, you get out and you get involved, you get your heart rate up a little bit, and you meet some people locally, and this is like this Occam's razor. So it's very simple, and I think the beauty is in the simplicity, and that's because it works. 75 minutes a week, guys. You spend more time than that on Instagram. I promise you. You know, that's 100% true. You know, get a little bit of exercise, 75 minutes a week. I promise you, if you do that, and if you do it around other people, you will feel better. I promise you. And everyone can do it. I have people say to me all the time, I can't do that because my knee hurts. All of the clinical research now shows that the worst thing you can do to a joint that hurts is not use it, right? That's all of the medical research says that. So get out, get active, and thank you guys very much for listening to me. I appreciate it. Not every crowd would sit and listen to me have this discussion in the professional manner that you guys did. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.